Welcome to Crisp Tutorials, where we keep it short, simple, and to the point. Today's topic is which software development methodology should you choose? Waterfall or Agile? It also discusses about various Agile practices and which is the combination of Agile practices that is actually used in projects. Now that we have selected our technology, our deployment environment, our version control system, now let's see which software development methodology should we be following. So there are only two types of software development methodologies. One is waterfall, another is agile. Waterfall technique is an old technique which people used to use years ago, and ever since the development of agile, people have absolutely forgotten or stopped using waterfall, and it is done for a very obvious reason. I'll explain you how waterfall used to work. Here there were stages of software development. They said that requirement stage, in the requirement stage, only a contract used to get signed between the client and the service provider, that what kind of an application do you want to develop, what all features it will be having. Then a BA team used to create an FSD, functional specification document, in which they used to mention every nitty-gritty about the product. After this, the requirement used to get frozen. It could never change. After that, the design would start, wherein the architect would create the rough layout of that project. After design phase used to get freezed. Now development would start. Now design could not be modified. In the development, developers would develop something as per the architect's technical specification document. Okay, so technical specification document could not be modified later on. Once the development has started, it had to be followed as it is. After development got completed, testing had to be done. After testing, bug fixing could be done, and after that, delivery. So the problem with this approach is that if one stage got completed, like requirement stage is completed, so requirements could never be modified after that. If TSD got created, after that developer could not suggest any modification to a TSD. An obvious reason for modifying the TSD could be, like in 2016 Angular 2 came. So now if developer suggested that instead of using Angular JS, let's use Angular 2, then architect would not listen. This approach would not allow that kind of changes. Another scenario is, suppose a client wants to change the FSD. Clients wants to say, see, we have a payment gateway, and you have only taken into consideration net banking. Nowadays, UPI has also come into India as a new payment gateway. So let's use UPI. So let's change the FSD. No, this was not allowed in Waterfall. FSD once created could not be changed. So this was the main problem. TSD and FSDs could not be changed. This was the main problem with Waterfall. Besides, the third problem was that client could get the delivery only at the end of the entire life cycle. Suppose if it takes 1 year, then the developer has designed the code as per the TSD. Architect has offered the FSD for making the TSD. So suppose one problem was there in the FSD, or probably the FSD was right also, but architect could not infer it correctly, or architect wrote the correct TSD but developer could not infer it correctly. So there is a bug which nobody is aware of, but as soon as a client sees that application, client comes to know that, say, it's a bug, you misinterpreted me in the FSD. So in that case, the delay was so much that an entire application was built on top of that bug. Now that bug cannot be fixed. So the third problem that I was referring to is that the feedback from the client used to be taken at the end, at the delivery stage, and which was very, very wrong. You should be taking constant feedback, so that if you are doing some mistake, the client is able to correct you ASAP, as soon as possible. So that is why Waterfall is a very wrong or bad software development methodology. Nowadays nobody uses this. So nowadays, today's projects use what kind of a software development methodology? Well, they use something called as Agile. So Agile has 4 principles. First principle is individuals and interactions over process and tools. So obviously, Agile says that don't follow so many processes, don't follow so many tools also. For example, if you have a tool for like Jira, suppose, for tracking your bugs, then the processes should not be so stubborn that if I have to assign that bug as a developer, if I have to assign that bug to some other developer, then I have to first assign it to the project manager, seek his permission, then project manager will assign it to another developer. This is a very cumbersome and tiring process. Instead of this, what is preferred in agile is, don't go for process and tools, go for individual and interactions. So one developer will speak to another developer, see, guy, can you take it? So if he says yes, he'll just get it assigned to himself. It's as simple as that. No process, no going through the PM, means project manager, nothing like that. So teams take their responsibility on their own, and besides, interactions between the teams are preferred. For example, agile says that face-to-face communication should be preferred. If you can't do face-to-face communication, then do a video call. If you can't do video call, then do an audio call. If you can't do audio call, then chat. If you can't chat, then and only then go for an email. So they usually prefer face-to-face communication because amount of confusion is less in face-to-face communication. In email, someone else can infer your email in a wrong way. He cannot understand your whatever you wanted to express in that email. So that doesn't happen usually in face-to-face communication. So that is preferred. Another agile value is working software over comprehensive documentation. What it means is, instead of delivering the software to the client at the end, keep delivering him chunks of the software every sprint. That means in every 2 or 4 weeks, develop something, show it to the client, deliver something more, show it to the client. So this agile value is called as working software. Prefer working software over comprehensive documentation. Comprehensive documentation means, in waterfall we used to have comprehensive documentation, and then they used to follow this FSD and TSD like Bible, and then everything depended upon these two documents. Suppose someone made a mistake while making these documents or while understanding these documents, then it would lead to bugs. So don't go by that. Just show a working piece of software to the customer. So that is preferred. For example, there's a very famous uh, example that is often given in agile seminars. People say that always deliver an MVP, that is minimum viable product, in sprint 1. So sprint 1 is called as skateboard print. So this comes from this example. Let's say your client has asked you for a car. So don't deliver him one tire in the first sprint, then 4 tires in the next sprint, then an engine in the next sprint. Don't do that. And instead, first deliver him a skateboard, because the purpose of the client is to go from point A to point B. Car is just a medium. So just give him some skateboard in the first sprint. Then in the next, then minimum viable product means the minimum functionality upon which the product owner can give you some feedback. So the client will say, see, I cannot steer it. Then give him a steering. Then he'll say, I cannot pedal it. Then give him a cycle. Then see, I have to do a lot of work. Can't it be automated? Okay, give him a motorcycle. Then he said, see, I want a roof also. Then give him a car. So keep improving it gradually. Besides, he can use the basic functionality of a locomotive right from sprint 1. So his basic purpose gets solved in sprint 1 itself. In sprint 2, 3, 4, 5, this product only becomes more and more elegant, more and more efficient. So increase its efficiency, keep incrementing the value of the product. But finally, the basic purpose got solved within the first sprint itself. And there's also a concept that, suppose in sprint 4 itself, if the client decides that, the amount of effort required to convert it into a car is much more than the value that I'm getting out of that product in the market. So he might just stop it there itself. He might say, okay, now let's not do that. So this was so much better as compared to waterfall, because in waterfall there was a contract which was made, it cannot be altered at all. Here the client has straight away said, see, this much is enough for me, stop working. This customer collaboration over contract negotiation. So keep speaking to your customer more and more, as compared to not speaking to the customer until the end of the year and then negotiating the contract just for suiting it to your product. No, that is wrong. So always keep asking for feedback. This is what it means. And the fourth value of agile says reacting or responding to change over following the plan. So what it means is, if the market scenario changes, and if suppose as I gave an example that a new payment gateway came into the market, say UPI, then your product should respond to that change, immediately inculcate that change within the product. That is much better, because your product should be on its toes. It should be the top-notch product, latest product when it get released. uh, as against that, in Waterfall we used to follow the plan, so your product was always 1 year old, because your planning started 1 year ago during the contract phase. So that is why you should always be reacting to the changes. Developers should also be very open to accept the changes. If the product owner says, in the next sprint, you have to work on a story in which you will add this particular functionality to the application, just say very nicely to him that, yeah, but create a story for it and we'll accept it in the next sprint. Within the sprint you do not accept the changes, but beyond the sprints bracket, you can always accept the changes. You should always be willing to accept the changes. So that's an agile value. So any practice which follows these four agile values is called as an agile practice. So there are many types of agile practices like Scrum, Kanban, Lean, XP, etc. also. But usually all the projects follow a combination of these three agile practices. So from Scrum, people usually derive the concept of sprint, daily Scrum meetings, estimations, plannings, retrospective meetings, demos, burn down chart. Yeah, burn down chart is an extremely important Scrum ceremony, and it's a great addition to project management, because it gives you a clear idea whether the team is on track or not. Besides, from Kanban, people derive things like Kanban board. So, in an agile team, if you are writing, if you are having a whiteboard or a blackboard like this, in which there are 4 columns: Scrum backlog, active stories, testing stories, and done stories, wherein you stick the sticky notes having the story names, and then when the developer picks up that story and starts working on that story, then he just lifts the uh, post-it card for that story and places it into active. Then when he completes the development, then QA moves it to testing. Then when he completes the testing and when the bugs are solved, then the story is said to be done. So that post-it card is moved to done. So if you follow this kind of a practice, it does not come from Scrum. Although you might believe that I'm writing Scrum user story numbers, user story names here, that does not mean it really comes from Scrum. The idea was given to us by Kanban. Likewise, the concept of minimum viable product, as I explained to you earlier, the minimum product upon which the product owner can give you some feedback is called as a minimum viable product. It's also called as the skateboard, because in the first sprint, as we saw, we should just be delivering the skateboard to move from point A to point B, which just completes the requirement, not very elegantly, but just completes the requirement. For example, in our case, Aspire wants a website, so I'll just create a website, deploy it in IIS. That will be my skateboard print. Now, why did I say deploy it on the IIS? Because product owner will never be testing on the developer machine. He has to see an actual working website, website. Deploy it in your environment. That is also fine. But it should not be a developer environment. It has to be a deployment environment. QA will also test on the deployment environment. Product owner will also test or see his product on deployment environment. So that is why this is your sprint 1 or skateboard print, and the product is called as a skateboard product or minimum viable product. So this concept also came from Lean. So normally projects follow a combination of these three agile practices: Scrum, Kanban, and Lean.